Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of our Inner Circle podcast. I'm Shane Hurlbut. I'm an ASC AMPAS cinematographer.
And I'm Lydia Hurlbut, a holistic coach and Reiki master. And in this episode, we are going to dive into member questions. In the Inner Circle podcast, the member questions were always really a big part of it, where you would submit your question and we answer it. And so we're so excited to get back to doing that again. So please submit your questions on the community section so that Shane and I have the opportunity to pick them and answer them. And you never know whose question is going to get picked.
All right. The first one is from a member in the UK. And I love the beginning of this question. Are you too old? Okay, so he says, I only discovered the Inner Circle podcast recently, and I've been listening to it daily. It's totally blowing my mind, and I'm learning faster than ever before. Thank you. Well, thank you for being a part of this amazing community, and thank you for your feedback. So we're going to keep doing it, and we love doing it. It's the one thing. It's like you think about, you got a cinematographer and a Reiki master. They would never put that shit together, but we do. Okay, I got into filming when I was 15. Making fun Tarantino-esque short films with friends. I studied photography at school and then went to university. I did a practical course studying a mixture of documentary filmmaking, narrative filmmaking, radio drama, and so on. I left university and built a career as an editor, cutting documentaries for the BBC, Netflix, Apple TV, etc. In my free time, I started to operate and direct the photography on short narrative work, corporate films, and music videos. After a while, I found the confidence to tell the television documentary producers I was sitting in the edit suite that I am also a competent cinematographer. I made various reels, and eventually I was given my first break in television as a documentary cinematographer lighting cameraman. I'm now 41 and I'm totally loving what I do, mixing up editing and camera work. I can walk to work. My editing is mostly based in my hometown of Bristol. The camera work gets me out of the dark room on adventures. I've been told my doc rushes are a pleasure to work with in the edit, as I clearly think about the edit when I'm shooting. I also learn a lot about how other camera ops and DOPs work by looking at their rushes. However, I want to up my game and work on stylistic documentaries as a DOP where budget allows for time to light creative interviews and dramatic reconstructive narrative scenes. I've got a great eye for composition. I work well and contribute talent, and I think I'm starting to develop my own style. I call myself a DOP, but deep down, I know I got a long way to go. I do value my skills, but I know I have a lot to learn. I love lighting, and I'm loving learning about lighting from you. But I think what I'm lacking is a knowledge of all the pro gaffer and grip equipment. It's amazing how quickly I'm getting to know the different names of things just by following your podcasts and videos, etc. But without putting things into practice, it can only get me so far. At 41, where do I go from here? Keep doing what I'm doing? Or do you suggest something more drastic, like dropping the editing, as I'm becoming increasingly more excited about directing photography? Any advice would be appreciated. Great question. Okay, Lydia, take it away.
Wow. Okay. I love the detail in that question.
So do I. And that is a great filmmaker right off the bat. And you can tell he's an editor.
Yes.
Because he literally is detailing line by line.
I think in listening between the lines, first of all, I would like to say you are never too old.
No.
You're never too old to pursue what you love, because age is truly just a number. And from the health and wellness lens, you have your actual age, your chronological age, but then you have how old are you feeling in your body, right? And so as long as you're fit and healthy, age is just a number.
Yes.
So I think we start there. The second thing is drastic change is never a wise move, because I think change is a process. Achieving goals are a process. So I think it's really good to continue on the path with what you love doing and you're really good at with editing, but then continuing to learn the cinematography pieces and be able to capitalize on those without just saying a huge veer and saying, okay, I'm a cinematographer now.
No, absolutely. And I have a great story to tell about this,
Yeah.
and I think it's going to really hit home. So drastic change is exactly never good, like you said. So what I always say is when you're doing transitions in your career, it's a crawl, walk, run scenario, right? And that crawl, walk, run is, so I was a grip truck driver that then became a dolly grip, that then became a key grip, that then became a best boy electric, and then a gaffer, and then eventually a cinematographer. So when I was jumping from the gaffer to the cinematography, that is a scary jump, because back when I did it, there was only 3 gaffers that had ever done it. And I was one of the 3. Now it's becoming a little more of, something that people actually do. And I love that.
Because people went from the camera side instead of the gaffing side to cinematography.
Yeah. You studied, you came up the ladder in camera, you were a loader, you were a second AC, first AC, then you became a camera operator, then you started doing second unit DP. Just like we were talking with George, Billinger about all this. He started shooting inserts for Janusz. And then eventually that started turning into, he would start doing little second unit, little splinter unit stuff. So, that's how the old way of how things were done, how you worked your way up. And it took years to work your way up.
Yes.
I started out first feature in 1988, shot my first music video in 91. So it was a very steep learning curve for me as a director of photography. It wasn't big scale. It was like music videos and stuff, but then the music videos kept on getting larger and larger and larger. But to get back to my point, was that transition I did very slowly. I kept the gaffing gigs going and the key grip jobs going while I was still, pursuing my director of photography career, right? So I would, take down time within my, gaffing, and, people would call and say, are you available? And I'd said, no, unfortunately, I'm shooting a music video, and I would pass on the job. And eventually, as you start to pass on those jobs, those clients slowly start to dissolve, right? And that's a cool process. That's what's supposed to happen. Now, I had many director photographies that, because I could key grip and gaff, they would take me all over the world with them, because I could come in and I could do both jobs on commercial productions and music videos.
Yes.
So it got to the point where I needed to stop that, because I knew I was never going to transition. So I had crawled and walked, shooting music videos and some commercials, and mostly doing gaffing and key gripping. And then what I did is to really stop this thing of DPs calling me all the time and saying, okay, I want you to go to Spain. I want you to go to Morocco. I want you to go all these places. I started saying, okay, I will do it if I get paid the same amount of money that you're getting paid as director of photography. So the director of photography said, okay, I'll do that. So he talked with production, and then he gave half of his salary towards my rate
Mm-hmm.
And then production kicked in the other half, and we went out as a dual unit. And that only lasted 4 jobs.
And then production said, okay.
It was production. It was mainly the director of photography. Just so you know, I'll never forget Joseph Yako. He goes, I can't afford you anymore because I can't keep on cutting my rate. And I'm like, mission accomplished.
Yes.
Right? So this is something that you can do with your edit job where you can crawl, walk, run if this is where your love is and this is what you want to do.
And I like those specific examples because I think everything with a big goal, and let's make no mistake about it, making the transition from editing to cinematography is a big leap.
Yes.
There's a lot that editorial gives you, but there's so much to understand as a cinematographer.
And there's almost a work environment and people that you've never, ever had contact with.
Yes.
So now you're jumping into an area that you've never really played in the pool. Because you've been in a darkened room for your whole career.
Yes. And I think that the diversity of skill set is one thing. I think what you want to have stability, and this is what people don't think about so much, because I think it's tempting to say, okay, this is my goal and I'm going to do a quick veer. But think about all the things that are impacted if you do that quick veer, which is, again, what we are not recommending. It's your finances are directly impacted. The stability of, your emotional health is directly impacted because you may be you may be underwater because of the steep learning curve, and that's going to maybe make you a less great leader. So I think that it's not only the skill set, but it's you as a human being. How well do you deal with change? How well do you deal being thrown into the deep end with new circumstances and maybe a really uncomfortable situation that is almost might be too much? And I think that it's knowing yourself, it's knowing your skills, and it's knowing, okay, if I'm going to do the crawl, walk, run, how can I keep myself accountable? How can I hold myself accountable to make sure that I am moving forward? And I think that this is a really important part to this question, because it's almost like setting dates in your calendar for DP gigs that you're going to take, or shooting documentaries that you're going to take or make yourself available for. And then in the edit world, block off time. It's getting really specific in that.
No, and when I read his question, I was like, I really love what I do. I work very close to home. I can walk to work. Well, one of the things that 99% of the people in this world do not do is they do not love their job.
Yes.
Right? So I consider myself one of the 1%. So if you are in that 1% of you loving your job, is a veer or a change something you want to do? If you can balance these DP gigs and still have your edit thing, and it's so funny. When you start to say, hey, I'm going to take this DP job, I'd love to be available for this edit, but can I get you on the next one? It almost works in your favor sometimes. Like they go, wow, this guy's really taken off.
He's really busy.
Yeah, I want him on the next job. So let's book him early. I got another thing. Can we get you on the edit? And then all of a sudden that falls in perfectly right after your documentary or whatever you're shooting. It's law of attraction too.
Yes.
Because the more you put out of gratitude, you're increasing that vibration.
Yes.
And you increase that vibration by loving what you do and enjoying life and being grateful for all the people around you and grateful for the team that makes you incredibly gifted at your job and all that stuff. And that will start to attract what you love. It's unbelievable how it works. Everyone thinks it's woo-woo, but I'm telling you, it works like $1,000,000.
I've definitely been rubbing off
Yes, you
because I
have.
love that you're talking about the universal laws, and one of them is the law of attraction. But here's the part that people miss, because my biggest issue with the movie and The Secret and the book and all of that was that there is a consistent putting in the work. There is a follow-up actionable, because I think there was a misnomer, right? In that, okay, I'm just attracting greatness and it's going to somehow magically come to me. No, there's a lot of work that's required behind, even though these universal laws are there and are, it's true. But I think it's very important to focus on, okay, what are the actionable steps that you need to take as the artist to see the difference in your life? And
I had a great member call me up for a coaching call, and these coaching calls are so awesome. And you can see that people really they want a roadmap. They want
yes,
somebody to help them in this process. And he was from the UK as well. He had worked at Airy London camera rental house for 7+ years. He sent me his reel, and his reel blew me away. And he says he's just not, his career is stagnant. It's not doing anything. And I said, okay. I said, what have you been, I basically sent him the law of attraction meditation that we do together.
yes,
And then I said exactly what you said. The work is very important. You call up your contacts at Airy London now that you've left and say, hey, can I borrow a couple cameras? Then you go to the place you also worked at, Kodak, because he had also worked at Kodak. And I said, can you get a loan on some film? And will they do the processing for you? And call in those favors. You've been doing all this amazing stuff for these great businesses. And sometimes you just got to say, hey, can you give me a leg up? Can you help me? And based on a little rejiggering of his focus, all of a sudden, they said, yes, you can have the cameras. They said, yes, you can have the film. We'll process it. We'll do everything for you. And all of a sudden, he then met a director that then signed him on a commercial 1 week later. And all of a sudden, the balls started rolling. And he goes, I don't know if it's this talk or this meditation thing that I've been doing. My wife thinks I'm crazy, but I listen to it all the time. And this is doing the work, because
yes,
it can't just be, I'm grateful for my wife and I'm grateful for my kids. No,
yes,
you gotta lay the seeds. And also, it's like, I always talk about vendor relationships being so important
yes,
in this business, and the loyalty so important, right? Because a lot of people jump all the time. And, I didn't get a good deal here. I jump to the next rental house and the next rental house. That's only going to systematically destroy you, because they're going to do they're going to get you the first time, and then they're not going to be able to be there for the second and the third and the fourth, because everyone is a favor. Unfortunately,
yes.
we never have enough money. I'm always trying to push the limits and the boundaries of the budget and what is there. So having a vendor that you're loyal to, like Keslow Camera with me, or MBS, those two are sponsors of our education, as well as they are my main vendors.
Yes.
And I go to them every time. I ask them to please help me out every time. They do, and they know I'm coming back and coming back. So you build that relationship. MBS, I've been with Evan Green for over 30+ years.
I know. And these relationships are so important. And I think in this age of technology, we really do need to touch on the importance of in-person relationships, the importance of reaching out and having that old-fashioned connection with people, whether it's a call, whether it's a note,
Yeah.
whether it's a personal note, whether it's an email, whether it is a letter with snail mail, whatever it is, I think it's really making your mark and having people remember you. And the one other thing I want to circle back around to is with, meditation, all of that greatness actually impacts the subconscious. So when you're doing the meditating, when you are listening to affirmations, you are subconsciously taking that in. It's impacting the subconscious and flooding it with really positive things, which then creates more positivity because then your emotional outlook, then your attitude is more positive.
Exactly.
So there is some brain science and it's not all just woo. And that's the exciting part to me is that, any way that we can positively impact ourselves and those around us, it comes back times 1,000.
Yeah.
So I know that we've gotten off topic with the question.
Well, I'll circle back with it because I think that one of the things that when I went to film school, if there is one thing that I took from film school was editing. And because I didn't want to be a cinematographer when I came out of film school, I thought I was going to be a producer, right? So having to do my own projects and light them and lens them and all that stuff. But in the edit bay is where I really started to see how I put stuff together.
Yes.
As a director of photography, having editing experience is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Because when it's all said and done, and it's not just the 180-degree rule, it is the pacing, the cutting pattern, understanding where the scene should start and where it should end is understanding and being an editor as a director of photography. So you've already gotten one, being a great editor, you've already gotten the ability to know how things go together and what works and what doesn't work.
And think how easy it is to cut your reel.
Yeah,
right?
No
because
kidding.
You already have that skill set. So bonus. Okay. What's our next question,
All right,
Shane?
let's move on to the next one. So second question, documentary handheld capture. From your experience, how do you top DOPs work handheld? What's their setup? I'm seeing a lot of pics of guys and gals working with their cam suspended from a rig with prime lens, manual follow focus, and a grip at either the front or the back of the camera. They seem to be using a monitor instead of a viewfinder. I understand the style of working, allowing the cam to move gently with easy rig, allowing for gentle movements. My only thought is that unless they are tall, they'll always be looking slightly up. Contributors or talents' noses. What are your thoughts and opinions of a good doc setup that allows for creative but solid run and gun? Should I be working with a focus puller for run and gun doc stuff, or is that not really done?
All right. Well, I'm going to take this question.
Why would you even do that?
No. Shane, this is all you all the time. Go.
Okay, so using a monitor and not a viewfinder. Okay, this is something that I get asked a lot. And my very long, good, great friend, Roberto DeAngelis, has been a Steadicam operator for many years. And if you think about a Steadicam operator, what do they look at? They do not look at a viewfinder. They look at a monitor. That's what they've done their whole life. Now, what does that enable them to do? See peripheral. They can be looking at the monitor and also see where they're going and also see other things outside of the monitor. They can see what they're stepping on, what they have to do stairs, but they can also see where the people are moving and then be able to react instinctively because they're not just in here. Now, everyone talks about, well, you're not an operator unless you can put one right eye in here and keep your other eye open at the same time. Well, that's very difficult to do, and it's also dizzying because you're definitely restricted because the whole camera is blocking your whole right side of what you can see. So you're going to definitely miss if somebody is starting to walk and you know that you're going to then follow them. So I find that handheld operating off a monitor gives you more ability to react, especially in a documentary style, to be able to react and really be one with the character, whoever you're following or whatever. Now, there are a lot of pitfalls that come with that because the sun hits the monitor and you can't see the frame. You then have to have some kind of a hoodman or something to be able to put so you can actually see the monitor. If you are going to go into documentary work, the best investment I would say to make is a super small HD DP7 high bright that rolls out about 1,500 nits, which will completely combat any kind of sun, any kind of daylight. You're going to see the image perfectly no matter what time of day. Okay, so that is your first investment, is a monitor that's not going to require you to put hoodmens on it and shades and all this stuff that's required. The other thing is I always like the camera on my shoulder because I don't hold it down here. I like to grab it up here. Back in the day of film, I had the magazine on the back, which was a perfect balance for the camera itself that became neutral and then the lens and the matte box that was out there. And I would physically grab the matte box because the matte box was attached to rods that went underneath the camera. Now everyone does clamp on matte boxes because it's absolutely so much faster and so much easier and so much better to work that way. So the whole idea of grabbing a matte box, if you grab one of these clamp-ons that are on these cameras, the thing's gonna go whoosh, fly right off and you're gonna drop your camera. So what I've done is I've created the grips that clamp to the bottom rods, and then they go up on the left and right side of the matte box. So I'm operating it like I used to with film. I love that. But there's some times where, that's going to get heavy or you want to be able to be up here and then drop down low. That's where a ready rig or an easy rig is going to be great. I also use the ready rig as well for handheld. So that was a gimbal designed suspension system that also works very good for handheld because you can go up and down. And when you move, it takes some of this out. When you walk with an easy rig, it's like having a fish line. I don't know if you've ever sat there and dangled a fish or your line, and then all of a sudden it gets hooked around you and you send it out there and it rips your hat off or whatever. That thing is like gunka, gunka, gunka. It's not good to walk with. It's good for you to be in a position, be able to be low, be able to be high, but it's not anything that's going to look good handheld walking with it. And anyone that says they're really good at it, they're just lying to themselves because it is, it's a weight that's going like this, swinging out. So I would say an easy rig is really good if you want to be cradling it like this for a lower angle. You can raise it up like here. Ready rig is another one. I've also used the Clausen Slingshot, which again is another gimbal device for handheld because it's on a bungee and you can walk with it and you can easily be on the ground or up, head level. So there's a lot of different suspension systems that you can invest in. There's also the Ergo rig that either has a center point or a right side, and you can put your camera on that, and that takes a lot of the weight off of you as well. But first off, if you're going into documentary photography, you rent all the gear, but bring your high bright. That's one thing you definitely want to invest in. And you can load LUTs into it. You can you can toggle between log and your LUT, and it gives you just a lot of freedom. You got false color on it. You can put zebras, whatever you work on. It's like your eyes into your creation. So that's a great investment.
I have a question. And that question is, how do you know when you have gone from those rigs and you're ready for the Ronin or some sort of gimbal or steady cam?
Yeah, I mean, that's really again a storytelling and a motion device. So if the documentary wants to feel like found footage and it's happening right then and there and it wants to feel immediate, then handheld is going to be really good for that. Wider lenses pushed in close is going to be
Mhm.
much better for that. If you want the documentary to have much more of a cinematic feel for a specific part, then I would say Ronin, Movi, Dolly, these kind of things are going to be much more cinematic in the imagery. It's very stable. It doesn't feel so, in there. And so those are specific styles based on the documentary. Like if I was doing a recreation of a murder or something, I think handheld might be really cool for that. And then you cross cut that with cinematic dolly shots or moving of your person
Mhm.
that's telling the story, and you have that beautiful juxtaposition. You have the handheld nature of the scene that you're recreating, and then you go back into a beautiful dolly move or a push in or a pull out of what the zooms are very important to also have in documentary filmmaking, because not only can the little duty dolly or the Dana dolly, the slider, get you that beautiful kind of parallax and wraparound. The zoom is your friend when that person is dumping that emotion and talking about that event. The zooming almost like gets you inside the mind of the filmmaker, of the person you're interviewing.
So I think it's really figuring out what shots are the most important and how to maximize your budget, because I know with documentary filmmaking or doing docs, everybody would be like, "Oh, wow, we don't have the budget. We can't afford it." But I think it's almost looking at your entire project, figuring out the most pivotal moments, and then figuring out the gear for that, and then doing the budget. So I just wanted to kind of try to hit one budget point.
Yeah, I think if I'm a documentary filmmaker, I would be investing in a monitor. I'd be investing in some kind of suspension system.
Mhm.
I would be investing in a Ronin or a Movi, some kind of gimbal. Um, and because documentary filmmaking, you got to be like a Swiss Army knife, right? You gotta be able to do a lot of things. You got to be able to balance your Ronin or Movi. You got to be able to change the lenses on it, set all your camera settings. All this is like, one man band or 3-man band, kind of
Mhm.
scenarios. So those tools enable you to get so much amazing, engaging stories and deliver those emotions, just low angle gliding along, say, and and if you're in a field and you just come up and then boom, you cut into the footage. That's not going to be done handheld. It's going to be janky. These are cinematic.
Yes.
You want to enable the tools to do all types of documentary filmmaking. Macro lenses is something that a lot of people forget about in documentary filmmaking, because macro is where you need to go down that rabbit hole for a lot of stuff. Think about recreations where you're looking at blood spatter or, true crime stuff or whatever. You need macro lenses to get in there. You don't want to do it with just a substandard, like a lens that you're kind of getting close. Making your content look unique is macro lenses. Look at Chef's Table, for example. That thing blew
Love
up.
that.
Why did Chef's Table blow up at the time? It's because no one had shot food or told those interesting stories of those chefs ever before. And it was like a game changer. And they used gimbals and they used sliders and they used macro lenses and all this stuff. And it really changed the way documentaries are presented now. Because when you watch a documentary 10, 15 years, or let's say 20 years ago, it usually wasn't the greatest looking thing. It had a great story. Now they're cinematic. They have so much story to tell, and they're like watching a movie now. Now
Yes.
you're engaged. Documentaries are not what they used to be.
And I think specifically to Chef's Table, it really sucked you
Oh, it
in
sucked you totally
just
in.
with those first few shots.
Oh, yeah. And the best thing was, I just love when you're on the back of one of the chefs and he's looking at this monstrous piece of art, and all you hear is the voiceover, "I want a plate on that."
Yeah.
And you're like, holy shit, what are we going to do? And then you see him roll out this, this gray drop on a table, and you're like, what the hell? And then all of a sudden, stuff is brought in and stuff is cracked and chocolate is chucked on the table.
Yes.
And now the table becomes the food. And you're like, I am all in, right?
And I'm not even a foodie, and I was all in. So anyway, I think we have answered that question really well. I just want to thank members because we really love answering these questions. I think that we can go.
Well, this was the genesis of the Inner Circle podcast.
Yes.
How it started was when we started the Inner Circle way back in 2014. We wanted something to pull from. We wanted like this gold chest of questions. And sure enough, they started coming, and they came in droves.
And it was so interesting. And so we want Filmmakers Academy members to continue to submit these questions. There is an area in the community right now for member questions for the podcast. So go to that channel, get your questions in. Shane and I love where this goes. It's kind of like going down unique rabbit holes, and everybody learns. And it can be anything from, technical questions to health and wellness, how to balance relationships, how to deal with family issues that come up. Really anything that you can come up with, we would love to try to take a stab at it.
Absolutely. And that's going to wrap up this episode of the Inner Circle podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Apple and Spotify, and check out our YouTube channel, filmmakersacademy.com. And we want to thank our new sponsor, Nanlux, for supplying all these amazing lights that make you look stunning, Lydia.
Thank you, Shane.
And I want to thank my crew, our crew, for everything that they do day in and day out to bring this podcast to life, and all the stuff that is required. It takes a village, and we have amazing shadowers and members that are all operating the camera that have come to donate their services to be able to do this. And I want to thank each and every one of you.
Thank you.
All right. That's it for this episode. Take care.